The wind swept through the busy city square that bright Saturday morning, carrying the chatter of crowds, the clatter of footsteps, and the faint laughter of children. Amid the rush, a man stood still, an island of silence in a sea of noise. His name was Julian Graves, a 46-year-old CEO whose face had once been splashed across business magazines. His smile rehearsed, his words precise. But now, behind his custom suit and polished shoes, there was only emptiness. He had built a billion-dollar empire but had lost his family in the process. His wife had left years ago, and his only son refused to speak to him. Money had given him everything except the one thing he didn't know he needed anymore: love. That morning, as Julian sipped coffee from a small cafe near the park, he caught sight of a little girl sitting on the curb, hugging a worn-out teddy bear. She couldn't have been more than 7. Her hair was tied into 2 uneven ponytails, her pink dress faded but clean. There was something about her stillness maybe, that made Julian pause. People walked by her, barely glancing her way. But she sat there with purpose, as if waiting for someone. He didn't know why, but something inside him urged him to go closer. "Are you all right?" he asked softly, unsure why he was even talking. The girl looked up, her big brown eyes shimmering with courage that didn't fit her tiny frame. She took a shaky breath, pulled out a crumpled 50 bill from her pocket, and held it up. "Here," she said, her voice trembling but firm. "Here's 50. I just need a dad for one day." Her words hit Julian harder than any business deal ever had. For a moment he couldn't breathe. A few people nearby slowed down to stare, but he barely noticed. What did you say?" he finally whispered. The little girl stood up, her hand shaking but her gaze unwavering. "I need someone to be my dad. Just for today. We're having a Father's Day picnic at my school. Everyone has to bring their dad, and I don't have one anymore. Mom says he's in heaven." She looked down, clutching the $50 tighter. "I thought maybe if I pay someone, they can come. I saved this from helping Mrs. Parker at her store." Her words cut through the cold armor Julian had built around himself for years. For a moment he wanted to walk away. This wasn't his problem. He didn't even know her. But something deep inside, something he thought was long dead, came alive. Before we go further, if you believe in kindness, second chances, and the power of love, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to Fearless Grace. It truly helps stories like this reach more hearts. Julian knelt down slowly, meeting the girl's eyes. "What's your name?" "Clara," she whispered. "Well, Clara," he said gently, "keep your money. I'll go with you." Clara blinked, unsure if she heard right. Then, for the first time, she smiled, a smile so pure it made Julian's chest ache. She grabbed his hand as if it belonged there and led him toward the small school 2 blocks away. He didn't know why he was following her. Maybe it was guilt, maybe loneliness, or maybe, for the first time in years, he just wanted to feel something real. When they arrived, children were laughing and running across the schoolyard. Fathers played catch, grilled burgers, and helped their kids set up picnic blankets. Teachers smiled as they passed. But when Julian and Clara walked in, a few eyes turned toward them. Clara didn't seem to notice. She was too busy pulling him toward a blanket covered in flowers. "This is ours," she said proudly. "I made it with Mom." Julian sat awkwardly, trying to fit into this world he'd long forgotten. He hadn't been to a park in years, let alone a school event. Clara began unpacking sandwiches, juice boxes, and 2 paper crowns she had made from gold foil. "You get the big one," she said, handing him the slightly larger crown. He placed it on his head, feeling ridiculous, and then unexpectedly, he laughed. It had been so long since he'd done that. As the day went on, he watched Clara play, her laughter like music. She introduced him to her teacher, proudly saying, "This is my dad, Mr. Graves." The words made his heart tighten. For those few hours, he wasn't a CEO, he wasn't alone, he was just a dad. When the games ended and families began leaving, Clara handed him a drawing she had made, a stick figure of her, holding hands with him under a bright yellow sun. "Thank you," she said softly. "I know you're not really my dad, but today felt like he was here again." Julian felt his throat close up. "You don't need to thank me, Clara. You gave me more than you know." As he watched her walk away with her mother, a woman with tired eyes and kind features who smiled shyly at him, Julian realized something inside him had shifted. He returned to his office that Monday, but everything felt different. The walls seemed emptier, the silence louder. He couldn't stop thinking about Clara's small hand holding his, her laughter echoing in his mind. A week passed, then two. Julian sent flowers to Clara's school anonymously, then to her mother's small home bakery after seeing a flyer online. He didn't know why, but helping them brought him peace. Months went by, and Julian's assistant noticed the change. He smiled more, worked less, and started visiting schools to fund scholarships quietly. But one rainy afternoon, fate brought Clara back into his life in a way he never expected. He was driving home when he saw a small figure sitting on the same curb where he had first met her. She was soaked, hugging her teddy bear again. Julian pulled over and ran to her. "Clara, what happened?" Through tears, she whispered, "Mom got sick. They took her to the hospital. I didn't know where to go, so I came here." Julian didn't hesitate. He took her in his arms, wrapped her in his coat, and drove straight to the hospital. When they arrived, the doctor told him Clara's mother, Amelia, had collapsed from exhaustion and untreated pneumonia. She had been working double shifts to keep their bakery open. Julian's heart broke. Without thinking twice, he offered to pay for her treatment. Over the next days, Julian stayed by Clara's side at the hospital. He brought her meals, read her bedtime stories, and helped with her homework. Slowly, he and Amelia began to talk about life, about loss, about how love often finds you when you least expect it. Amelia was strong but gentle, and she carried a warmth that Julian hadn't felt in decades. She thanked him every day, but he always said the same thing. "You don't owe me anything. You and Clara saved me first." Weeks passed, and Amelia recovered fully. Julian helped them rebuild the bakery, investing quietly at first, then working beside them. The smell of fresh bread, laughter, and music began to fill his once empty days. And one evening, as they closed the shop, Clara ran up to him holding a new drawing. This time, it showed three figures holding hands, her mom and him. Above it, in big colorful letters, it said, "My family." Julian felt his eyes burn. He looked at Amelia, who simply smiled and said, "You don't have to be born into a family to belong to one." That night, as the sun set over the city, Julian realized the truth. He had spent his life chasing success, but in the process, he'd forgotten what truly mattered. Connection, compassion, love. The little girl who had once offered him 50 didn't just ask for a father. She had unknowingly given him a second chance at life. Months later, Clara's school held another family picnic. This time Julian arrived early, carrying a basket filled with sandwiches and a heart full of gratitude. When Clara saw him, she ran across the field shouting, "Dad," before jumping into his arms. The word no longer felt borrowed, it felt right. The crowd clapped as Clara's teacher welcomed everyone, and Julian looked at Amelia sitting nearby, her eyes shimmering with quiet joy. For the first time in years, Julian wasn't alone. He wasn't the lonely CEO in a cold office tower. He was a man who had finally found home, in a small bakery, a brave little girl, and a woman who believed that kindness could heal the deepest wounds. As the day faded into soft daylight, Julian whispered to Clara, "You once said you needed a dad for a day, but I think I needed a daughter for a lifetime." She smiled, hugging him tightly, and in that simple embrace, surrounded by laughter, love, and sunlight, Julian knew his world had finally come full circle. If this story touched your heart, please take a moment to like, share, and subscribe to Fearless Grace. Your support helps us spread messages of hope, kindness, and second chances across the world. And before you go, comment below. What's one act of kindness you'll never forget? Because sometimes all it takes is one small moment to change a life forever.